This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad and live today. This past week, I watched a documentary about a horrific event that happened out in the Gulf. It was February 2013, and the Carnival Triumph cruise ship experienced a major engine fire, leaving it stranded in the Gulf of Mexico with 4,200 passengers and crew. The fire resulted in a loss of power, including the ship's sanitation systems, leading to unsanitary conditions and earning the cruise the nickname the Poop Cruise. Passengers endured days without power, limited food, and a lack of working toilets, creating a harrowing experience. Now, when you watch the film, the unsanitary conditions are the primary focus because it was so putrid and foul on board. But one scene that stuck out with me was a woman commenting on the food situation when they lost power. She said that the line to get food was well over 2 hours long, and many of the people, once it was their turn to receive food, they began hoarding it. She said that people were taking 10 burgers apiece when all I wanted was one. When people are thrust into unfamiliar situations, their behavior can sometimes become a bit irrational. In this case, no one knew how long they'd be stranded out at sea. Would there be any more food, or should they just grab whatever they could get their hands on in order to assure that their family was fed? A survival of the fittest mentality overtook all the passengers. It was everyone for themselves. Now I want you to picture yourself on that boat and imagine how you might have reacted. My guess is that we probably would have done something very similar. We might have become greedy, protecting our own people any way that we could possibly do so, even if it was unnecessary, even if it was at the expense of others. But when we hear our gospel reading for today, we are challenged to rethink our tendencies and our behaviors and to consider alternative solutions to those predicaments that we might face. Jesus says to the gathered crowd, "Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." So what is the definition of greed? It seems like this is the next logical question for us to ask ourselves as we strive to do God's work in the world. Naturally, Jesus expounds on his directive by telling a parable, one about a rich man whose crops produce abundantly, so much so that he has nowhere to store everything. This guy has corn coming out of his ears. What to do with the excess crops? Well, the man thinks about it for a minute, and he decides that he's just going to tear down all his barns, and he's going to build bigger ones. Why not? They're his crops. He worked hard for that harvest, and as long as the harvest doesn't spoil, it will allow him to have ample goods for many years, thus allowing him to relax and eat and drink and be merry. All his potential problems, they'll be whisked away. Life will be good for this guy. But this isn't the way. It can't be. It shouldn't be. Instead of building bigger barns and hoarding everything to oneself, Jesus suggests a new way of doing things, of giving of one's means, of sharing the harvest of our lives, of turning over some of the resources that we enjoy so that those who don't have much might benefit. We might find short-term hope and security in the things of this world, but that is not where our trust should be laid. Our true treasure lies in our relationship with Jesus. He's the one we trust in. He's the one we turn to. He is the one we emulate through our own gracious acts of service and love toward others. And for these reasons, we are instructed to not think inwardly, store up things for ourselves, but rather think outwardly, discover how we might make a real difference in the world today. Trusting in God can be harder than it might initially seem. We like to be in control of our lives and have say in the direction that we go. And we think that by having money, power, or status, we can kind of circumvent God altogether and do things on our own. The problem is that we all find times when we lose that control, when things don't go our way, when we are helpless and hopeless, in need of not only direction and guidance, but also God's hand in accommodating our basic needs. In the book of Exodus, we read of the Israelites being freed from their bondage in Egypt. God's released his people from the clutches of Pharaoh. And now the people are ecstatic. But soon into their journey in the wilderness, they discover that, hey, life's still not a walk in the park. It's hot out here. They're hungry. They're upset. They begin to murmur that life would be better back in captivity than out there in the wilderness. And that's when God provides manna for the people, a flaky white substance that falls from the sky and eliminates the hunger pangs that persist. The manna falls each and every day, which is great. The only problem is that the manna will not last more than a day. By the next day, it is filled with worms and rot. So the people have to enjoy what each day brings. There will be no gathering up and hoarding and building bigger barns to store this gift from heaven. It must be enjoyed right then and right there. And therefore it makes sense that everyone shares it and eats, so that it will not go to waste. The story of manna is a story of trusting that what God provides is enough, and that if we have extra, maybe it would be a good idea to share with others. God is gracious enough to give us the things that we need in this world, whether it is our talents or our treasures. Couldn't we pass some of these blessings on to other people so that they too can experience the love of God firsthand and learn what God's unconditional grace is all about? I mean, there's no use in holding on to a bunch of rotten manna. So where do you place your trust? Where can your true treasure be found? I find it rather remarkable that the answer to these questions can be found on the very thing that many of us would consider to be the one thing that brings us the greatest amount of security. If you take a look at any U.S. currency, you will find on it the phrase, "In God we trust." What a great reminder for us that while having money is good, and it can be even empowering, it's even better to trust in God and share some of that money with other people. You never know when one of your generous actions will change the life of another individual. You might just be providing manna to someone else who is struggling in the wilderness to find their way. Your graciousness might just be that one thing that gets someone over that hump and moving forward to the light of a bright tomorrow and a future that is filled with blessing and love. So think about what you have, what you are storing up, and consider the fact that you probably don't need to grab 10 burgers from the lunch line. Trust in the way of Christ, for you are blessed to be a blessing to others. Amen. Remember as you go about your day that yesterday is gone. Tomorrow does not yet belong to you. So why not live today, knowing that you never walk alone? We'll see y'all next week. Later.